Hi Marshfields. So most of you know that I love animals a lot and that I did some rehabbing over the holidays last year. So what I did was I took in poorly and sick animals and I helped with a proper wildlife service called Unity Wildlife and Rehabilitation. Okay, mostly I had hedgehogs through, and this little fella is George. So George came to me in May. He's my last patient. All of my others have been released. Okay, he's my last patient. George is not going to be released, unfortunately. What we are going to have to do is find George a garden, a big garden, that is enclosed that he can't get out of. Okay, so that he has plenty of space to roam, because hedgehogs like to roam for about a mile around where their nest is. Okay, you'd be surprised how quick a fat little hedgehog can be. Okay, so George came in probably a little bit smaller than he is now, which is about the right kind of weight for this time of year. Okay, they're just coming out of hibernation. So a normal hedgehog goes to sleep during the day, and then in the night they wander around and they find all their food. George doesn't do this. George is what we call an insomniac. So George wakes up at about 2:30, 3:00 in the afternoon, don't you? Okay, and then what he does, I go for a wander. What he does is he then stays awake for a while before going back to sleep again, and then he does get up in the night, but he doesn't stay awake all night. So he should be asleep, which is called nocturnal, during the day. Okay. The other strange thing about George is that on this side he has an eye that is shut and he never opens it, and we've checked and there's nothing wrong with it. Okay, so I'm not sure why. He's just a pirate. Now George also, as you can tell, has no fear of humans whatsoever, and this isn't because he's been handled by me a lot, because I don't tend to pick him up. Okay, I'll show you the only reasons I ever pick him up in a minute. So George is not scared of being handled, and again, like I said earlier, this is not because I handle him all the time, because I really don't. What I handle him for is some checks. Okay, so they're the same checks as I would do when he comes into me. Okay, so first of all, the first thing we would check with a hedgehog is whether they bawl when you go near them. As you can see, George does not. However, I can check that George does know how to bawl by picking him up and very gently turning him over, and oh, there we go, one bawling hedgehog, and you can see his little face poking out. Okay, so this is a defense mechanism. So if a hedgehog won't bawl, it can't defend itself against predators, because obviously these spikes, and I wouldn't recommend you pick them up, I'm used to it, and have gloves on. Okay, but these spikes protect George, and you can see that when he bawls they stand up, and when he's not bawled they kind of lay flat. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to make you jump then. Now this part around here, you can see the fur around the bottom. This is called a skirt. Okay, you very gently have a look at that. George is being very good. Okay, the first thing we do is we spray them with flea spray, because most hedgehogs that come in, it's unlikely they're not going to have fleas. We have to use specific spray because dog flea spray is actually toxic. Okay, so we use a particular one. So if you get a hedgehog that's poorly, I suggest you call a wildlife service, because they will know which hedgehog flea spray they can use. The service I used to work for, again, was Unity Wildlife and Rehabilitation. So once I've defleed the hedgehog, I'm going to check for something called ticks. They're like a little tiny insect, and they just grab on to the hedgehog with their little teeth, and then what they do is they drink the blood and it fills up a sack on their back. So they kind of look like pebbles. They are disgusting. Getting rid of them is one of my least favourite jobs, although it's very satisfying. It's a bit like squeezing a spot. Okay, so I check George doesn't have any ticks by checking his spines, and then I would check his skirt just gently like that. Okay, and then I would just gently check the other side. Okay, and then one of the most important places to check are around his ears, which he doesn't like. No hedgehog likes that. You don't like it, do you, George? So around his ears and around his face, okay? And if I get a tick, I use a tick remover, okay? This is important. If you find a hedgehog and it has ticks, you must not pull them off, because what will happen is it will release some chemicals into the hedgehog's blood, and it can make it poorly and even kill it, okay? So I check for fleas, I check for ticks, and I weigh him. So at this time of year, he'd just come out of hibernation. He was running around in circles outside the Lido, and this was caused by dehydration because we had such a hot summer last year, okay? So what George did was walk around in circles during the day, which is why we got a call. The other reason that a hedgehog can be walking around in circles is because they might have some mites in their ears. Fortunately, George didn't have this, okay? So the 3 things I check, again, because I'm going to quiz you later: fleas, ticks, weight, okay? Now, once hedgehogs get to a certain weight, they are then ready to go into hibernation. Once the temperature in October, November drops to a certain point, a hedgehog will go into hibernation. Its body will do it naturally, okay? And all that fat that they've stored up, because a hedgehog can be as big as a rugby ball before he goes into hibernation, all that fat gets burnt off, keeping their body warm and keeping them going so that they don't starve, because obviously they don't come out of hibernation to eat, okay? George didn't hibernate this year, so he was very, very fat, and we had to put him on a diet. He's now a good size, so he now eats one of these a day, okay? Meat flavour, not fish. So hedgehogs, if you've got hedgehogs in your garden, the best thing you can do is put out some meat flavoured dog food or some meat flavoured cat food. Now, when George was fattening up, I gave him more than a little bit pouch. I would have given him, you know, a good portion of a can, not the whole can, but a good portion of it. But he's very greedy, so we do have to be a bit careful, okay? But one of these a day is fine at the moment because he's a healthy weight. So my last bit of information for you doesn't really apply to George so much, but hedgehogs during the summer will have their babies and they will be nursing. What we often get calls for is hedgehogs that are out during the day. They've been picked up, they've been taken to a vet's, the person hasn't left their details with the vet, and it turns out that the hedgehog is a female, and actually that means that that hedgehog was trying to feed while its young were asleep. So mummy hedgehogs will often venture out during the day, unless it's walking around in circles or you can clearly see that it's not well. The best thing to do is to leave that hedgehog alone, because if it is a mum and you take it away, then obviously those babies aren't going to get fed, and we really don't want that because hedgehog numbers in this country are declining. So if you keep seeing the same hedgehog during the day, then you should give Unity a call. Yes, George, that's my finger. You can't eat my finger. What are you doing? He's a very strange hedgehog. Okay, so I'm going to put George back. Okay. Oh, maybe I won't. I think he's going to come and say hello to you all. Are you going to go and say hello? I'll give you a close-up before I put him back. So here he is. He's a very smelly little beastie. Okay. So I'm going to put George back, and then I'm going to come and tell you some things you can do to help hedgehogs, because they need all the help they can get at the moment because they are really struggling in the wild. So I have put George away, and I have washed my hands, and I have also anti-backed my hands because hedgehogs are quite disgusting beasties, and whenever you handle any animal you should always wash your hands. I have other animals as well, which means that it's doubly important because George is a wild animal and my pets are domestic, so they are not resistant or immune to anything that George might have. So one thing I didn't mention was that hedgehog fleas are host specific. So there's a lot of people who say, ooh, I don't like hedgehogs because they give my dogs and cats fleas. This is not true. Okay, What a hedgehog flea will do is if it falls off a hedgehog or jumps to a cat or a dog, it will spend a few minutes, not even that probably, and go, this is not a hedgehog. Ugh. And it will fall off. And it will just wait for another hedgehog to come along. So, yeah, your cats and your dogs are perfectly safe. I have a cat. She has never caught fleas off any of the hedgehogs that have come through my garden or my house with the baby ones. So, yeah, you don't need to worry about that. However, hedgehogs are struggling in the wild. Unfortunately, their numbers are declining rapidly. One of the major problems is road traffic. During the COVID lockdown, there's been some evidence that their numbers have actually increased slightly because there are less cars on the road, so there are less accidents with them. I mean, they are quite fast. I don't know whether you've ever seen a hedgehog run. Maybe YouTube that one, because there are some quite amusing videos of it. They are very, very fast. But there are some things you can do that will help hedgehogs. Okay, one of the things you can do is to leave water out. If you leave a shallow bowl, so something like, I move this base of a plant pot, you can pick these up for about £1. Okay, they sell them in Tesco's, I believe. Okay, or even just a plate or a dish, not something with a big bowl, but you know, something shallow. Leave some water out, change it daily, and that allows the hedgehog to have a drink and not become dehydrated. Also, if you leave something as big as I just showed you out, they can have a little bath, which hedgehogs quite like. If they're really hot, they can have a little bath and a drink at the same time. Because I can tell you that George likes to poo in his water and then still drink it. As I mentioned before, he's a disgusting beastie. Okay, the other things that you can do are you can speak with your neighbours. Please do this before you cut a hole in the fence, because it's a shared fence. But if you speak with your neighbours, you can all make a CD-sized hole in the bottom of your fence, and you can make what's called a hedgehog highway. And what that means is that if you all do it, then your hedgehogs will be able to travel between gardens without having to go out the front and into the road. So it keeps the gardens for the hedgehogs and they can move around safely. Okay, and you can buy some lovely little hedgehog highway things to stick round them. You can decorate them, you can put little signs on. There's lots of tutorials to make your own if you don't want to buy them. Okay, so that's a great way of doing it. Another thing you can do is to leave food out. And you don't need to go to a garden centre and buy expensive hedgehog food, because actually hedgehogs are more than happy to eat any kind of meat flavoured dog or cat food. Okay, and just make sure that it's not fish, because fish is very, very bad for them. And also, if you leave some wet food out, but if you also leave some biscuits, that will really help them with their teeth. Okay, so dog or cat biscuits, dog or cat wet food, bit of that each night. And if your hedgehogs are regularly visiting your garden, then you will see it disappear quite quickly. Okay, if you know you've got hedgehogs in your garden and they don't eat the dog or the cat food straight away, don't give up. It's because they don't know it's there. If you keep leaving it there, like we did in the wildlife area at school, they'll soon learn that there's a source of food in that particular place, and they will come out and they will come and eat there each night. And if you're really lucky, you'll be able to look out of your house window and see them. Okay, if you go near them, they're just going to ball up. So make some hedgehog highways, leave some food out, and leave some water out. That's some things you can do. Also, if you make a big log pile, that's really nice. Just get some old wood, pile it all up in the corner of the garden, and your hedgehogs will love nesting in that. Okay, you can also, and I'm going to show you this is in my garden. Okay, let me just turn this camera around. Oh, I don't think I can do that while it's recording. You can also buy nice little hedgehog houses. Okay, so this is one that I have in my garden. Okay, it looks like a little igloo. Okay, now I have lots of stuff in my garden, which means that actually I don't really get hedgehogs in my hedgehog house. They like to nest in all the other rubbish. But it's nice to have them. And, you know, if you do get hedgehogs, you might get lucky. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed meeting George and learning about hedgehogs. If you want to look up any other facts on hedgehogs and send them to me, you can email studentwork@marshfields-ict.org, and you will be able to send me some facts and see if you can teach me something that I didn't know already. Or you can send me a photo of some hedgehogs in your garden if they've come out at dusk. Okay, guys, it is question time. Were you paying attention? I gave you a lot of information. So, what did I say? What two things could cause walking around in circles for a hedgehog? That's right, it was dehydration or ear mites. Okay, number two. What is it important to remember about hedgehog fleas? Yep, they are host specific. That means that they will only live on a hedgehog, not a dog and not a cat. Okay, so which three things do I check on George regularly? And it's also the same thing I check when a hedgehog comes in to us. Did you get it right? It was, do they have fleas? Have they got any ticks? And their weight. Okay, the other question I'm going to ask you is, are hedgehogs nocturnal? Is that true or false? And what does nocturnal mean? Yes, they are nocturnal, and it means that they are active at night, not during the day, unless they are a nursing mother who is out looking for food while her young are asleep. Okay, my last question for you is, what do hedgehogs do during the winter? Yep, they hibernate, and that means that they go to sleep while it's really, really cold. They fatten themselves up during the summer, they go to sleep, and they don't wake up until spring, and they use the fat reserves that they built up during the summer to keep them alive and keep them warm.